I'm doing all the time to change as much as I can to alter the wave shape, to break it apart in such a way that there's another release of a sound. And then once you capture that sound, it can be filtered over and over and over and over. And there's like an endless amount of sort of filters and things I put it through. This is like a really long technical answer, but it is sort of, the treasure of sound to me is sort of the inherent harmonic particles, because every sound is made of, like, it could be, dozens or hundreds of separate harmonic bits. And so I'm sort of like, feel like I'm digging for treasure in a sound to find what sound actually comprises the sound itself.
Yes, because if you...
And I hope that all makes sense.
Well, yes, it certainly does to me.
Yeah.
On the part that I like very much is that you can take a note, as you say, if you took middle C, and then when you attach a harmonic to it, you can change the expression and the feeling of that note to be sad or happy or concentrating or releasing, because it is a dynamic that's attached to the original note that steers you in that direction.
That's exactly it. And, it's something I discovered like a long time ago, and now it's become sort of an obsession, is what particles kind of make up a sound, because in a way, sort of the spirituality of that, it's almost like, what is this is sort of for lack of a better word, but what is the God sound, or what is the divine principle of any sound? So, like in nature, there's just so many millions or billions of separate sounds that if you kind of alter the sound, it almost has this kind of human speech-like, super, super emotional quality that, it's almost like what I was saying earlier about people, like what they're saying might be a little bit on the surface, but what they're feeling might be so intense that they can't really quite say it in a normal conversation. The same thing about any sound that I make, whether it's, a drum or kind of a string thing. If you heard the original sound source of where I started from, it wouldn't sound like anything like of where it ended up.
Yeah.
Because it's like there's some... Inside of every sound, there's something like this, I don't know, like a diamond of what is the most resonant part of the sound that when you hear it, it's almost like, it's like God whispering to you, and which has a sound or something. And like, again, when you hear it, there's something like, it feels organic, and it feels like breath is moving, or like you're almost inhaling someone's breath or consciousness.
Yeah.
So I want every sound to sound like it's the most like organic sound in the world that you've never heard.
That's there's a lot of passion there in what you were describing. I'd like to sort of ask you how you could link that, how you linked it to Brian Lipton. You said, made reference earlier that you were friends. So is this passion linked with what his studies were about?
I think, Bruce and I are, very, very, synergistic. I mean, he talks about, like, I use sound and he uses cells in the same way. So, in a nutshell, Bruce was kind of one of the very first people ever to sort of link consciousness and belief to the behavior of cells themselves. So he was kind of always going on about that, that he doesn't really give any credence at all to something called genetics, like, you're predisposed for this and that. And in his world, which I believe totally, everything is environmental, which means that you set up a field and everything's working within a field of consciousness. So take anybody or any situation and take them out of a bad field and put them into something that's supportive. It could be like think of like a child whose parents are just stuffing absolutely just junk down their, down their mouth. And you're going to have a wild, somewhat, maybe threatening or violent or very confused
You
or
are
a
what you
depressed,
eat.
or, I mean, yeah, just, and it's, people then will think it's the kid, but no, it's just the food. But then there's a field in the house that supports all the wrong choices.
Yeah.
So I would say sort of the reason we worked well together on that project was the music was assisting his dynamics in exactly the same way that if thoughts are controlling your cellular behavior and therefore like almost your health.
Yeah.
And then, you were talking about, like using it for people, with cancer is almost like that would be, one of the highest uses, or I feel very humbled that anything I would do music-wise would be used by people.
Yeah.
In that situation, because in a way that's like, I'm not creating it specifically for that, but that's the perfect use because, people in that situation or anything as dire as that, and Bruce is kind of thinking that a lot of it is surrounded in the field of what they're believing. Like, is it a genetic kind of a condition, or is it a consciousness, a belief about what you believe about yourself?
And I suppose in those situations where, unfortunately, you are faced with cancer and possibly losing your life to cancer, many people are drawn to meditation and the spiritual because they want to make sense of the situation as well as try and instill some kind of natural healing. And meditation is very much a part of that. And going back to frequency, if you were in a state of stillness but you're listening with an open conscious mind, then that brings in a healing in itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, your body. I mean, our bodies are, they're no different than the universe as a whole. I mean, our body is the universe, and they're both listening exactly the same. I mean, if you ever wondered, like, why do some people seem like everything works and other people why nothing works? But in a sense, is there really any difference in and this is the main word, is there any difference in the capacity of the differences of those people? And I'd say no. There's no difference at all. And so if you kind of bring it down to its smallest essence, the difference probably goes down to something called what is the field of belief that everything works or everything doesn't work, because thoughts are energy and they're magnetic. So everything that every experience from the present to a week from now to a year from now to 20 years from now is just nothing more than like the magnetic resonance of what is driving you.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of people think that the future or events are these kind of events that have nothing to do with them specifically, and they're just reacting.
Yeah.
And in fact, every single thing has been a self-creation based on mirroring back something magnetic to you.
Yeah.
So, and just, of course, that goes back to health as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the body is just waiting. I mean, if there's an illness, I think it's just so waiting for, like, the next signal that sort of indicates, this isn't needed in a way. Looking at illness in terms of like, and this is a tough one, and I haven't had to face this, so it might be easier for me to say than people going through this, but, illness is as much as a gift as incredible health, because it's the kind of the signal of, this is the change, and there's no other way to sort of signal the change sometimes than the health, but I think it can change just as easily as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, this episode is actually about consciousness and the power of the mind. And obviously, when you use music, that can change the frequency and the thought process. And as you said earlier, good thoughts, bad thoughts, equally that has an effect on the energy that we give out. And it also attracts the energy that we bring back. So thank you very much, Russell.
Thank you, Russell.
It's been an absolute delight to speak to you. And thank you once again for your support for the music And hopefully I'll speak to you again soon.
We'll have to have you on the show again soon.
Yes, amazing.
There's
Thank
so many
you,
questions
Russell.
I have and I didn't get a chance to ask.
Yeah. Anything else? I mean, it's great questions, and I really love what you guys are doing.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
I will.
Thanks, Russell.
We'll call you again soon.
Absolutely. In the new year.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, good. And I'll send you guys some music tonight.
Thank you
Excellent,
very much.
thank you.
Oh, wow.
Yay.
A lovely man.
Thanks, Russell.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks again.
Wow, wasn't that fascinating? I was just hanging on every word. And there was one thing that he said in there that I actually absolutely wanted to touch on was in relation to how music is, like the depth of the music and the harmonics and everything else. And there's so many people that have had near-death experiences that have, been on the other side for a little while and have actually said that there is a music in heaven. And as Russell was saying, it's this core of where all music originates from. And when you're in heaven, when you're on the other side, this music is everywhere because it lives and breathes and it becomes part of everything that we're a part of. So the beating of a butterfly's wing or in a raindrop, this sound is just resonating everywhere in this space.
The part that he intrigued me with was the concept of resonance and the harmonic. But if you the part between you two, or between you and me, perhaps, is that we know that every physical matter, doesn't matter what it is, at a molecular level, it vibrates.
Yeah.
There is an atom that's moving around, or a molecule that's moving around an atom, and so on. So there is noise, there is things happening.
Yeah.
Because it's physical. And my question, of course, is when you enter the realm of the spiritual, and there is no molecular harmonic left or connected with you anymore, then what happens?
Right.
Very interesting.
Well, it's when we start peeling back the layers, and this is where the origin of everything is.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, move on to the next section.
Yes, absolutely.
That was terrific. He was a very interesting guy. I hope we get him back onto the show
Yeah,
again.
love to.
On our next segment, we have we received an email from Alyssa from South Australia, and she asks, "What is heaven like?" And I thought, well, it's very relevant considering what we were just talking about.
Yep.
I thought I might lead in with that one. There is a book by a Dr. Ibn Alexander. Now, his book is entitled Proof of Heaven. And it's a documented recount. He's a renowned brain neurosurgeon. He retells this amazing story when he had a brain trauma and was in a coma for 7 days. And in the story, he says during the search for his sister Betsy, who he had lost connection with when they were adopted as young children, Dr. Alexander suffered the brain trauma, as I said. And during the 7 days, he tells us he saw heaven. And in that, he saw warm, bright light, heavenly music, as we were just talking about, lush, fertile green landscapes, waterfalls, crystal pools, mighty oceans, and his senses were heightened and blended with everything in existence. And life was everywhere, people, animals, flora, fauna, and there was a great sense of peace and love, as he describes in his book. And there's no sense of otherness or of being alone. Everything in heaven is connected. Everything is one. And there's a lovely quote from his book where he says, "I found myself as a speck of awareness on a butterfly's wing among pulsing swarms of millions of other butterflies. I witnessed stunning blue-black velvety skies filled with swooping orbs of golden light, angelic choirs leaving sparkling trails against the billowing clouds." I thought, wow, that is just absolutely beautiful.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
It's like, wow.
A speck of awareness on a butterfly's wing.
Yeah.
Well, that's all very well and good, but is heaven what we expect it to, we want it to be? Do we see this is the question, do we see heaven the way, at those moments, when we're in that close proximity, do we